Here we are going through final preparations to cast a slab of Plainface. It's normally good practice that the edges are rebated, so I've cut myself some rebates which go all the way around the outside. That is useful when you come to butt two casts together, because you then have a natural area and space to put the canvas jute scrim, which will act as the strengthener and provide a little bit of movement with the cast. I've also, to try and ensure that we get everything in exactly the same place, I've just put some marks on the outsides of these rules where I need to put my reinforcements, which will be lavs. Okay, so now we're going to go and start gauging up for our firstings mix. Okay, another vital ingredient, and which often is the downfall of students and professionals alike, is the preparations. Absolutely vital, and I'm just going to show you some of the materials that I have being prepared and ready to go. I've got my full width canvas here. I've got some ropes which we will use as reinforcement to go under and above the lavs, and I also have the lavs already cut and prepared. They've been soaked as well, to ensure that we get as good a cast as we possibly can. Cut. Okay, so we've made sure we've got everything prepared. We're now going to apply the firstings. We'll brush everything in with a liberal amount of plaster, right over the tops of the rebates and all over the flat surface of the mould. Making sure that we get right into the corners with the plaster and brush it all in. And then we give it a light splash all over before we start striking off. Must ensure that we've got a nice covering on the rebates before we strike them down. Okay, that's firstings put on. I'm now going to wash out, and then when I come back I'm going to strike off and start preparing the back of the firstings. Okay, here we are striking off on the outsides of the rebates. This must be done at regular intervals to ensure that we're always working off the top of the raw and not off the plaster. And next, we'll strike down on top of the rebates. Also, just to help us and to stop cockling, which is where the firstings don't bind with the seconds, and sometimes you get a very, very eggshelly face, we'll just smooth out the top. So we've got a nice consistent thickness over the whole face. This is now ready for the application of the canvas. Now, at this stage, I've now placed the canvas in position. I now need to ensure that the canvas is pressed into the plaster, but not too heavily. And that's where the benefit of having a reasonably even firstings proves its worth. Alright, so we press that in, we allow that to pick up a little bit. I am now going to go away and gauge up my seconds. Okay, we're now going to brush in with our seconds. Again, be nice and liberal with the plaster and getting right in those corners. Now we have an approximate 75mm overlap between the layers of canvas, just to ensure that we've got plenty of coverage and there aren't any gaps where the seconds go straight through to the firstings. Alright, all brushed in at this stage. You may just give it a light splash just to make sure that that stays nice and juicy. Next step is ropes around the outside. So we get those and we'll start soaking them. And that goes on top of the rebate, all the way around. Do the other side. Okay, ropes in their right place. We now get our two long lathes. Alright, just soak them in a bit of plaster, put them in a position. It should be approximately 4 or 5 mil below the top to allow for the turnover of the canvas and for a layer of plaster. Again, to the outside once, approximately 3 to 4 mil below the top. We then have 2 further lathes, same again, and put them into position. Now, at this stage we have 2 options. Either we turn everything in, brush that in, and then lay our middle strengtheners and reinforcements in, or we lay it in now. I'm going to take the latter option and I'm going to lay it in now. So I now need ropes in the right positions. This one here, following the marks that we've made, that I showed you earlier on, we bunch that up, just gets us a bit nearer to where we want to be at the top. That's that there. Just thought I'd show you, just before we start brushing in for the second time, there's the outline and there's the pattern. So we've got reinforcing lathes which are sitting on ropes, and these ones have been cut to size, and we've got one long one right the way through the middle, again sitting on a rope. We now brush it in and then we turn everything in. Okay, turn the ends in, again ensuring that they are below the surface of our roll. Now we just finish off the back with a light splash, similar to the one we gave the first inch, before we start striking off around the outside and building up the reinforcement in the middle, if necessary. One more. Just thought I'd show you, just before we start brushing in for the second time, there's the outline and there's the pattern. So we've got reinforcing lathes which are sitting on ropes, and these ones have been cut to size, and we've got one long one right the way through the middle, again sitting on a rope. We now brush it in and then we turn everything in. Okay, turn the ends in, again ensuring that they are below the surface of our roll. Now we just finish off the back with a light splash, similar to the one we gave the first inch, before we start striking off around the outside and building up the reinforcement in the middle, if necessary. One more. Start applying this, and I might need to just put on a very, very quick little gauge. The benefit of that is when we go to screw that up now, that is exactly the same thickness as the outsides. Alright, if you want to run the tape. Alright, so we now build up all our reinforcing areas. Now using a straight edge, well, a lot of people use a bit of 2B1, which will be more than sufficient. We just run the rule over the top, and that just ensures that if we were screwing this up, which is normally the way that it would be fixed, that the middle section with our reinforcement is exactly the same thickness as around the outside, which is absolutely vital. Otherwise you won't keep the cast flat when you fix it. And then we just go around one last time, make sure everything's nicely struck off. And hopefully one plain face slab. Okay, now hopefully later on we should be able to, in the next 40 minutes, we should be able to strike the outside rules, take her up and have a look at the face, and then find an appropriate area to fix it. Thank you very much. Leslie Lewis, over and out.